It started on a Tuesday, just an ordinary one, like so many others before it. The kind where the sky can't decide if it wants to be bright or brooding, and even the wind feels undecided. Sonora sat by the window of her tiny apartment, tracing circles on her coffee cup, watching the cars rush past below like they had somewhere far more important to be. She wasn't expecting the call. She had promised herself she wouldn't answer if he ever tried again, but when John's name flashed on her phone screen, everything she'd rehearsed vanished. Hey, his voice cracked through like gravel under boots. Sonora didn't respond immediately. It had been 3 weeks since they last spoke, and she still remembered how his words tasted like vinegar, like betrayal. He had looked her in the eyes that night, those same brown eyes she once trusted, and said it without hesitation. You're not the kind of woman a man keeps. You're cheap. She should have screamed, thrown something, but instead, she had simply stood up, packed what little dignity she had left into her silence, and walked out. No drama, no goodbye, just vanished. And now here he was, calling her like that night never happened. You okay? He asked. She hated how those words still mattered to her. She hated that. Her heart twitched just hearing his voice. I'm good, she said flatly. I was thinking, he started, and she knew from the way he paused that nothing good was coming next. Maybe we should meet, talk. Sonora swallowed the rise in her throat. Talk? After calling me, I didn't mean it like that, he cut in sharp. You know I was drunk, she laughed then, not from humor but disbelief. Drunk doesn't invent what you said, John. It just reveals it. The line fell silent. He didn't deny it. He didn't apologize either. Look, I was a mess. Still am, kinda, but I miss you. I thought maybe we could start over or something. Sonora leaned back in her chair, trying to feel the weight of those words without collapsing under them. She used to crave this kind of call, dreamed of it when the nights were cold and lonely, but now, it just felt late, wrong, empty. I'm seeing someone, she lied, because she wanted to hurt him. Just a little. There was another pause, then a scoff. Already? You called me cheap, John. You don't get to ask questions like that anymore. He didn't respond, and that was fine. She hung up first this time. The truth was, there was no one else. Just her and the bruises left behind. But she had learned something since leaving. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not go back. Later that week, Patricia, her oldest friend, showed up with takeout and wine like she always did. When things were falling apart, I still can't believe he said that to you, Patricia muttered between bites. Like, what even gives him the right? Sonora shrugged, pushing noodles around in the container. He thinks money equals value. He always did. I just didn't want to believe it. He didn't fall in love with your wallet, San, Patricia said, her voice softer now. He fell in love with you. He just didn't know how to keep something he couldn't control. That one stuck. Over the next few days, Sonora kept busy. She started painting again, something she hadn't touched since college. Her strokes were messy at first, but they got bolder with each canvas. Her mind slowly entangled itself with every splash of color. And then, just as she began to feel steady again, Eli showed up. He was new at her workplace, brought in to lead a marketing campaign that no one wanted to touch. Tall, calm, with a quiet confidence that didn't try to steal attention. The first time he spoke to her, he asked about her favorite book instead of what she did on weekends. She liked that. You paint? He asked one evening after noticing the specks of blue on her wrist during a meeting. Trying to, she replied with a grin. It's more therapy than art, then it's the best kind. She wasn't ready for anything new. But for the first time in a while, she didn't feel broken, just healing. And when she laughed with Eli, it didn't feel like she was betraying her past. It felt like she was choosing her future. And John, he kept calling. But Sonora never answered again. It was nearly a month since that last call from John, and Sonora had stopped counting the days. There was something liberating about deleting a number, not just from her phone, but from her mind, her heart. The echoes of his voice still lingered. Sometimes, but they had dulled into background noise, like a song you used to love, but now couldn't stand to hear. Eli had become a quiet fixture in her world. Not invasive, not demanding, just there. With his soft questions and steady eyes, he reminded her of what respect looked like, what kindness could feel like when it wasn't dressed up in manipulation. One Thursday evening, as they walked out of the office together, he glanced at her and asked, You want to get a drink? No pressure. Just Good conversation, bad lighting. She smiled at that. Only if the drinks are overpriced and the music's terrible, he grinned. Then I know just the place. The bar was tucked into a forgotten corner of downtown, with cracked leather boots and dim lights that made everyone look a little more mysterious than they were. They talked for hours about nothing and everything. Books they'd never finished, places they wanted to go but hadn't, the weird things people said in elevator silence. It wasn't romance, not yet, but it was real, and for Sonora, that was enough. But peace never stays long when you've been bruised by the past. Late that night, as she reached her apartment door, she noticed the envelope. No name, just taped there, waiting like a trap. She hesitated before opening it. Inside was a handwritten note, familiar in the slanted, confident script she knew too well. I still see you in every corner of this city. Tell me where I lost you. Let me fix this. No name signed, but it didn't. Need one? She tore it in half, dropped it into the trash, and locked the door behind her. Still, the message rattled inside her long after she laid her head down. The next day, she sat in the break room alone, stirring creamer into her coffee, when Patricia stormed in with a look that could set fire to walls. You didn't tell me. He came to your place. Sonora blinked. What? John. I ran into him outside your building. He was just standing there, like some rejected villain in a rom-com. Told me he left you a note. Sonora's stomach sank. What did you say to him? Patricia crossed her arms, told him to choke on it, then walked away. Sonora couldn't help the small laugh that bubbled up. That's why you're my best friend. But deep down, it bothered her. Not because she missed him, but because he didn't understand. Still thought he could scribble some words and undo the weight of what he'd said. You okay? Patricia asked, her tone softer now. Sonora nodded. I'm just tired of ghosts showing up when I'm finally breathing right. Later that evening, she sat on her couch, blanket wrapped around her legs, staring at the empty canvas leaning against the wall. She hadn't touched her paints in days, not since that note. Eli texted. Eli. Still up. I have coffee. And terrible jokes. She stared at the screen, then typed back. Sonora. Only if your jokes are truly awful. Eli. What do you call fake spaghetti? An impasta. She laughed despite herself. 10 minutes later, he was at her door, holding 2 cups and wearing the gentlest smile she'd ever seen. They didn't talk much that night, just sat, quiet, comfortable. It wasn't that Eli was replacing anyone. He wasn't some rescue boat after a shipwreck. He was something else entirely, a reminder that not everyone throws you overboard. And, for the first time in what felt like forever, Sonora thought maybe love didn't have to hurt to be real. The next week brought with it a strange quiet, not the kind that made you restless, but the kind that settled in your bones, calming. Sonora found herself waking up without dread, working through the day without constantly checking her phone, going to sleep without replaying every broken thing John had said. The air around her had shifted. She was lighter, not healed, not yet, but closer. Eli kept showing up in little ways that mattered. A surprise coffee left on her desk before she arrived. A playlist he made her titled For Rainy Days and Sharp Thoughts. A text just before bedtime that said, You made it through another day. Just thought you should know that matters. He wasn't trying to win her over, at least not in the way she was used to. No flashy gestures, no drama, just consistency. And for a woman who had been made to feel disposable, that was its own kind of magic. They hadn't talked about John. Not directly. But Eli wasn't stupid. He could see the weight Sonora carried. He just chose not to make her bleed to prove she was strong. One evening, after a long day filled with meetings and caffeine and office gossip, Eli walked her to her car again. I got tickets to this indie film on Saturday, he said, trying to sound casual. It's probably going to be weird and way too artistic, but they serve those mini donuts with cinnamon sugar, so I figured it balances out. She smiled. You trying to bribe me with fried carbs? Absolutely. I'll go, but only for the donuts. He nodded, pretending to be offended. That's fair. But just as she got into her car, a figure stepped out from behind another vehicle a few spaces down. Her body tensed before her mind even registered who it was. John. He didn't say anything, just stood there, staring like he had something rehearsed but forgot the words. She froze for a second. Eli noticed the shift in her expression and followed her gaze. That him? He asked quietly. Sonora nodded. Yeah. You want me to stay? She exhaled. slow. Nosh stepped out of the car again and shut the door gently. But thank you. Eli didn't argue. He gave her a look that said, I'm here if you need me, then turned and walked toward his own car, leaving her the space she didn't ask for but deeply appreciated. John didn't move until she was standing just a few feet away. You look different, he said. Sonora tilted her head. Different how? I don't know. Stronger, maybe. Distant. He shoved his hands in his pockets. Harder to reach. That's because I am, she replied, no heat in her voice, just fact. He gave a slight nod. You blocked me. I did. Patricia called me a cockroach. Sonora almost smiled. She's not wrong. John looked down, then back at her. His expression wasn't angry or arrogant, it was tired. Worn. I've been thinking a lot about what I said. I know. Sorry. Doesn't fix it. It doesn't, she said, crossing her arms. It's not even close. But I meant what I wrote in that note. I still don't. She cut in gently. Don't say you still love me. Love doesn't sound like what you said to me that night. John's jaw tightened. He looked like he wanted to argue, to fight for something, but she wasn't giving him a battlefield. I thought you'd come back, he admitted. Eventually. I thought you knew me better than that. A beat passed. Cold air slid between them, like a curtain. Who's he? She didn't answer. John looked away, a bitter smile tugging at his mouth. Of course. I'm not with anyone, she finally said. But that doesn't mean I'd ever come back to you. Because of one mistake? Sonora laughed softly, shaking her head. John, what you said wasn't a slip. It was a belief, something you felt deep enough to say out loud. And even if you regret it now, the fact that it ever crossed your mind tells me everything. I was drunk, stop using that like it's a defense, she snapped. If anything, it's a confession. He flinched, like her words hit harder than he expected. I didn't come out here for drama, she said, voice softer now. I came because I wanted to look you in the eye and let you know I'm done. Really done. No more wondering if you'll change. No more hoping you'll grow up. No more space in my life for people who tear me down and call it honesty. John looked at her for a long time, not angry, not begging, just realizing. You've changed, he said again. She smiled this time for real. Thank you. She turned and walked away. Eli was still parked, engine running, waiting without asking questions. When she got in, he looked at her, eyes searching. You okay? She nodded. I am now. They drove in silence for a while, the kind that didn't press too hard or feel awkward. Just peace. You know, Eli said eventually. You don't have to be brave around me all the time. She looked at him, surprised. You're allowed to hurt, allowed to be messy. I know, she whispered, but I'm learning how not to live there anymore. He smiled. That's enough for me. And it was in that quiet, beside someone who saw her and didn't want to fix her or own her, that Sonora felt something crack open, a small light, flickering but real. Saturday came like a long exhale. Sonora stood in front of the mirror, pulling a sweater over her head, not bothering with anything too fancy. This wasn't a date, she told herself. Just a movie. Just cinnamon donuts and bad film metaphors with a man who made space for her silence. Yet, as she added a touch of mascara and glossed her lips, she couldn't help noticing something unfamiliar in the reflection. Hope. A version of herself she hadn't seen in a long time, light in the eyes. A little unsure but trying. Eli was right on time. He always was. When she opened the door, he offered her a coffee he knew she liked, smiled like he meant it, and didn't stare too long. Just enough. You look cozy, he said, eyeing her oversized cardigan. Movie theater couture, she replied, locking the door behind her. The film was just as weird as expected. Lots of long pauses and black and white flashbacks that made no sense. But the donuts were hot and coated in sugar like little apologies for the plot. They sat side by side, sharing glances during strange scenes, laughing quietly when a character monologued about the meaning of chairs or something equally dramatic. Halfway through, their fingers brushed in the popcorn bowl. Eli didn't pull away. Neither did she. After the film, they walked through the cool night air, the streets mostly empty. The city always felt different at night, less noisy, more honest. You ever miss him? Eli asked gently, not looking at her. She thought about it for a second, then nodded. I miss who I thought he was, who I needed him to be. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I get that. She glanced at him. You ever been hurt like that? He hesitated. Once, long time ago, she cheated. Told me. I was too boring, that I made her feel invisible. That's cruel, Sonora said. He smiled, soft and crooked. Yeah, but I learned a lot from it. Like how some people only love you when they're unhappy. And when you stop being their distraction, they start looking elsewhere. She sighed. That sounds familiar. They kept walking, and silence stretched between them again, but it wasn't empty. It was full of understanding, of wounds that didn't need explaining. At her apartment door, she paused. Thank you, she said, for the donuts? He teased. No, for not expecting anything from me. Eli looked at her, and his expression was more serious now. Sonora, if all you ever want is a friend who shows up with coffee and watches weird films, that's enough for me. But if one day you wake up and realize you want more, just know I won't run. Her throat tightened. You always say the right things. He shrugged. I don't. I just say the honest ones. She smiled, stepped forward, and wrapped her arms around him. A simple hug, nothing more. But something in her chest unclenched. He didn't try to kiss her. He didn't linger when she pulled back. He just nodded and turned to leave. Inside her apartment, she sat down by the canvas she'd ignored for weeks. She dipped her brush in. A fresh pot of paint blew this time, deep and bold, and began with one strong stroke across the center. Outside, her phone buzzed. Patricia saw John today. He was sitting alone at that bar you hated. Told the bartender he lost the best thing that ever happened to him. I didn't disagree. Sonora stared at the message, then locked her phone and tossed it aside. She wasn't interested in being the best thing someone lost anymore. She wanted to be the best thing she ever chose. A week passed, and life continued quietly, steadily, without drama or apology. Sonora had begun painting more, sleeping better. The ache that used to sit on her chest like a permanent guest had started to fade into something more manageable. It hadn't disappeared, not fully, but it no longer ruled her. On Tuesday, she met Patricia for lunch at their usual spot, a tiny cafe with too much sunlight and not enough room between tables. They sat near the window, sipping iced tea and picking at overpriced salads. I feel like I don't know you anymore, Patricia said, her tone light, but her eyes sharp. In a good way though. You seem clear, like someone took a cloth and wiped all the fog off your face. Sonora smiled. That's dramatic. So was the guy who called you cheap and then cried into whiskey over it. Let me have my moment. Sonora laughed, and it was real, full. I'm not thinking about him anymore. Not in the way I used to. I don't feel small around my own thoughts now. Patricia reached across the table, gave her hand a squeeze. I'm proud of you. That night, as Sonora walked up to her apartment, there was no letter, no shadow lurking in the parking lot, just a gentle breeze and the faint hum of the streetlights. She stopped by her neighbor's door and left a small sketch she'd drawn of their cat, just because it made her smile. Giving without losing something in return that felt new. Eli hadn't texted since the movie, but not in a bad way. He gave her space, respected her pace. She thought about him more than she expected. His calm, his eyes that didn't demand, but always noticed. On Thursday, her phone buzzed. Eli, big meeting tomorrow. You free for a pre-panic dinner tonight? She grinned. Sonora, only if I don't have to pretend to like kale again. Eli, deal. I know a place that serves comfort food and doesn't judge. They met at a cozy little diner that smelled like melted cheese and warm bread. Eli ordered pancakes at PM unapologetically. Sonora went for fries and a milkshake. It felt like being 12 in the best way. You look lighter, Eli said, poking at his stack with a fork. I feel it, she replied. I think we forget how heavy people can make us until they're gone. She looked at him, surprised by the simplicity of the truth. Yeah, that's exactly it. He studied her for a moment. You ever wonder if maybe, just maybe, it was never about being not enough? Maybe it was about being too much for the wrong person. Sonora went quiet, heart catching in her chest. I've never thought of it like that. Well, start thinking about it. Because you are too much. In the best, most uncontainable way. She didn't know what to say, so she smiled and stole a bite of his pancake. They walked back to her place afterward, the city wind brushing against them like whispers. When they reached her door, she hesitated again. Want to come in? She asked. Eli didn't answer right away. He looked at her, really looked. Only if you're sure. I am, she said, her voice steady. Inside they sat on the floor, backs against the couch, listening to old jazz from her tiny Bluetooth speaker. She showed him some of her recent paintings, the ones she hadn't posted or shared yet. He stared at each one like they were secret messages. You paint your feelings, don't you? He asked. Don't most people? Most people hide theirs. They talked for hours. Not about the past. Not about John. Just about now. About color and silence and how good things didn't have to come with pain. When he left, he kissed her cheek, gentle, respectful, not a claim, just a moment. She closed the door and leaned against it, smiling. And in that quiet room, something finally clicked into place. She wasn't healing because of Eli. She was healing with him. There was a difference. The next morning brought rain, not the violent, thundering kind, just soft, slow drops that made the world feel a little quieter. Sonora sat by her window again, sipping her coffee, wrapped in a blanket that still smelled faintly like cinnamon from the night before. Her fingers toyed with the edge of her mug, but her mind was elsewhere, on Eli, on the way he'd looked at her paintings, the way he hadn't tried to make a single thing about himself. That kind of stillness was rare. She thought about texting him, then thought better of it. Not because she didn't want to, but because she was learning how to sit with her own joy without needing someone to validate it. That was a new kind of power. At work, the usual chaos buzzed around her. Patricia poked her head in just before lunch, eyes gleaming with that I know something you don't energy. You're glowing, she said. Did he kiss you? Sonora rolled her eyes. No, he kissed my cheek. It wasn't like that. Patricia plopped into the chair across from her. Please? A cheek kiss with eye contact is foreplay for emotionally mature people. Sonora laughed. That's not a real thing. It absolutely is. And if he's that patient, girl, marry him now. Sonora shook her head, smiling despite herself. It's not like that, yet. But it could be. Yeah, she said, quietly. It really could. Later that day, an email landed in her inbox from a local gallery, one she'd subscribed to years ago but never had the courage to interact with. They were hosting an open submission for new artists. Nothing huge, just a chance to hang to pieces for a community night. She stared at it for a long time, then she clicked reply. When she got home that night, she pulled out the two paintings that had scared her the most, one of a woman drowning in color, the other of a single heart wrapped in threads that looked too tight. She stared at them both, heart hammering. She was still afraid, but she wasn't paralyzed. The door buzzed around 7. She opened it to Eli, holding a bag of tacos and a crooked smile. I brought offerings, he said, in exchange for shelter from the rain. Come in, brave traveler, she teased, stepping aside. They ate on the floor again, because chairs suddenly felt too formal. He watched her as she talked, really watched, like every word mattered. She told him about the gallery, email, the submission, the fear. You should do it, he said, mouth full of taco. You're ready. I'm terrified. That's how you know it matters. They sat in silence for a few moments. Then she turned to him, serious now. Eli, what are we doing? He paused, set down his food. Do you want a label? I don't know. I don't want to fall into something because it's comfortable. I've done that before, and I ended up losing myself. Eli nodded slowly. I'm not asking you to fall. I'm just walking beside you. That's it. No rush. No pressure. If we become something more, great. If we stay like this, I'm still lucky. Sonora looked at him, a weight lifting. She didn't know she still carried. You make it easy to breathe. Good, he said. Because love should never feel like drowning. She didn't say anything, just leaned her head on his shoulder. And, in that small, quiet room, with tacos gone cold and hearts warm and beating steady, she realized something important. She wasn't surviving anymore, she was living. The gallery called 3 days later. Sonora was at her desk, sipping on lukewarm coffee, halfway through answering a string of mind-numbing emails when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't pick up, but something told her to. Hi, is this Sonora Wells? A cheerful voice asked. Yes, this is she. I'm calling from the Lantern Gallery. We received your submission and we'd love to feature your pieces at next Friday's showing. Congratulations. For a moment, she said nothing, just stared blankly at the sticky note on her monitor while her heart thudded wildly in her chest. That's amazing. Thank you. Really. You're welcome. We'll send the details by email. Looking forward to seeing your work on the wall. When the call ended, Sonora just sat there, blinking at the screen. On the wall, her work, hanging in a room where people would look at it, feel something, maybe even see a reflection of themselves in it. She texted Eli first. Sonora. They picked it. Both paintings. Next Friday. The reply came almost instantly. Eli. Yes. I'm celebrating for you already. What do you need? Champagne? Pizza? Marching band? She smiled so hard it made her cheeks hurt. Sonora. Just be there. That's enough, Eli. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Later that night, Patricia came over with 2 bottles of cheap wine and more excitement than Sonora could handle. See? You're doing it, she said, kicking off her shoes. This is you. This is the version of you the world should have met years ago. I still feel like a fraud, Sonora admitted. Good. That's how you know you're doing something real. They drank. They laughed. They talked about all the versions of themselves they'd had to shed over the years, especially the ones built to survive men like John. Speaking of John, he hadn't shown up again. No notes, no calls, no shadows at the edge of her day. Just silence. And strangely, she didn't miss him, didn't wonder, didn't hope. The absence felt like closure. Friday came faster than expected. The gallery buzzed with soft chatter and the hum of slow jazz. People wandered the space in small clusters, wine glasses in hand, pausing to stare at the art. At her art, Sonora stood near the back, heart pounding in her ears. She wore a navy blue dress Patricia had bullied her into buying, a little more fitted than she was used to, a little more daring. But she looked good. She felt good. Eli found her first. He was dressed in a charcoal blazer and jeans, not flashy, just clean, handsome in the quiet, unbothered way he always was. Wow, he said when he saw her. You look like you belong here. She blushed. Thanks. They walked the gallery together, stopping in front of her 2 paintings. A few people stood nearby, studying them with tilted heads and whispered conversations. Do you want to hear what people are saying? Eli asked. Nope, she said quickly. I just want to be here, with you. And they did just that. No pressure, no expectations, just presence. Halfway through the night, an older woman approached her. Excuse me, she said. Are you the artist? Yes, Sonora replied, unsure what was coming. I just wanted to tell you your piece. With the threads around the heart? It made me cry. It felt like something I never knew how to say. Thank you for painting it. Sonora's throat tightened. Thank you for telling me. The woman smiled, nodded once, and drifted away. Eli leaned in and whispered, You did that, and, for once, Sonora didn't doubt it. She had come full circle, from being called cheap, disposable, unworthy, to standing in a room full of strangers, seen, valued, chosen, not because of who she had to become for someone else, but because of who she dared to become for herself. The night after the gallery showing, Sonora lay in bed, eyes tracing the shadows on her ceiling, heart calm in a way it hadn't been in years. The weight she had carried, the shame, the doubt, the words John left like scars, felt lighter now, like memories from another life. There was no applause, no dramatic finale, just peace. And peace, she realized, was louder than anything John had ever said. The next morning brought sun instead of rain, warm and soft, like a blessing. She got up early, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She made breakfast while humming under her breath, flipping eggs, burning the toast just slightly, and laughing about it instead of cursing. Eli called around 9. You get any sleep, superstar? He asked, his voice still husky from just waking up. Enough, she said, smiling into the phone. I'm thinking of heading out for a bit. You free? For you? Always. They met at a park on the edge of town, nothing fancy, just a trail with old trees and a little lake where ducks floated without a care. Eli brought coffee. She brought herself, no makeup, just clean skin and quiet eyes. They walked side by side, not rushing, not filling the silence with pointless chatter. She told him about the woman at the gallery, how her words lingered deeper than any compliment. That painting, Eli said softly, it said everything you went through, but it didn't feel bitter. It felt like closure. Sonora nodded. That's exactly what it was. And that second one, drowning in color, he asked, glancing at her. Was that about him? No, she said, looking at the sky. That one was about me, finding myself again, realizing I was always too vibrant for someone who only saw in black and white. Eli didn't say anything right away, just reached out and gently took her hand. It wasn't new anymore, this closeness, but it still sent something warm spiraling through her chest. She didn't pull away, didn't guard her heart like she used to, because she finally believed she was worth loving. They found a bench by the lake and sat for a while, watching the water ripple under the breeze. You know, Eli began, if you ever decide to show more of your work, like really go for it, I'll be there, every time, front row. She smiled. You always say the right thing. No, he said, turning toward her. I say the truth, and the truth is, I love you. Her breath caught, not in fear, but in surprise. Not because she wasn't ready, but because it sounded right. He didn't rush to explain, didn't try to soften it. She looked at him, heart pounding, and for once didn't second guess what came next. I love you too, she whispered. I think I've been falling for a while. I was just scared to admit it. Eli squeezed her hand. Me too. They sat there, no need to kiss, no need to prove anything. Just two people who had found each other not because they were searching but because they had stopped running from themselves. Later, when she got home, her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. John, I saw the photos online. You looked beautiful. I never deserved you. I know that now. Sonora stared at it for a second. No anger, no pain, just silence. She deleted the message without replying, because not all stories needed a reply. Some endings were best left closed. She turned back to her canvas, dipped her brush in yellow, and made the first stroke of something new. No heartbreak, no regret, just color, just life. And it was enough. The end.